Hello, everybody. So glad to welcome you here on this beautiful sunny afternoon, and that you very much appreciate that you made your way all the way up those steps of Low Library, past all the people who are sunbathing, and joined us for the conversation. I'm Suzanne Goldberg. I'm Executive Vice President for University Life, and it is my total pleasure to welcome you to this conversation called Citizen Leaders, a conversation with the Obama Foundation Scholars. I'm also so glad to have this opportunity to introduce many of you to the Obama Foundation Scholars. This is the inaugural class at Columbia. We're so excited to have them here, and we do hope this will become an annual event. I want to thank the Columbia World Project, which is the host organization for the scholars, for partnering with us on the event today. And I'll introduce our amazing scholars in a moment, but first a quick word about the Office of University Life. So I think many of you know us, or I hope you do. We are the hub at the university for university-wide student life issues, information, fun things, serious things. And we also try, as we do today, to bring students, faculty, and staff from across the university together to talk about the pressing issues of our time. Along these lines, I want to invite everybody here to something very important tomorrow, which is you can join us for lunch, and it's at noon, an event called, to mark Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It's called Understanding the Columbia Landscape, Moving Toward Change, and it's going to be a workshop and presentation and discussion on some research we've done on our own community related to sexual assault and how we might enhance our work on prevention and response. There's a lot more information on the University Life's website, and you can find any University Life staff here. Can the University Life staff here raise your hands really high? You can find anybody afterwards also to get more information. You can also, if you haven't already downloaded the University Life app, you can find information there and on our website. So just a quick point before we jump in. So University Life, we are really all about our university as a community. And as I often say, you might think of the word community as a noun, right, as a thing that you just get. But it's actually more like a verb. It is a thing we create when we come together. And so I would just like to ask you, just take a second and really or 5 seconds to introduce yourself to somebody you don't already know and say what school you're from. And then come back to the front and we'll get started. All right, so we'll come back together, and the reason I asked you to do that now, this is what happens. People start talking and then they don't want to stop, which is beautiful. Hi, folks. All right, let's come back together. And let me just say this. One of the reasons I asked you to introduce yourselves now is that our format today is we'll be in conversation together. We'll open up to Q&A. We'll also give the other Obama scholars here a chance to introduce themselves. And then we have snacks and all of this, and we really want you to get a chance to know each other better, to get a chance to talk with the Obama scholars around the room together. So our focus today is on active citizenship, which is especially important at this time when many people are thinking, both in New York City, in the United States, around the world, about how to generate change, how to create change, whether that's in politics, whether it's with respect to our climate, whether it is the New York City subway system. You can pick the issue that is most pressing to you right now. And so the question on the table for us today is, what does active citizenship look like? How do you do it? How do we make that work? So to kick off the discussion, I will be talking with 4 of the inaugural Obama Foundation scholars. And if I could just ask the other Obama Foundation scholars just to stand up for a quick second. You'll introduce yourselves later, but I would just like everybody in the room to see that you're here and who you are, and for us to recognize you for a moment. Great. So we're so proud to have the Obama Foundation Scholars at Columbia to bring together rising leaders from around the world who have demonstrated a commitment to active citizenship, to finding solutions within their communities, for their countries, for their regions. And over the course of the academic year, the scholars are engaging in all sorts of exciting work at Columbia. They're engaging with each other. They're engaging with colleagues around New York City, with the goal of building new capacity, new skills, and strengths to bring back to the work that the scholars are doing to accelerate the work in their communities. So after our conversation again, there will be much more chance to talk. I want to introduce now our stellar panel, starting from closest to me. Elise Barbie, who is from France, is the co-founder and CEO of SINGA, a citizen movement that connects refugees in Europe with local communities by matching them through their common passions and competences. SINGA has brought together 30,000 people. Just want to underscore that, right? It's hard to bring together 5 people sometimes. 30,000 people, including 3,500 refugees who have participated in its programs, and more than 100 entrepreneurs who have created businesses and nonprofits to support innovation and migration. And I think also I could say on behalf of all of us that the sadness around Notre Dame and the fires, I think, is something that people are feeling around the world. So let me express that to you right now.
Thank you.
Next, yes. Ana Maria Gonzalez-Forero. You're not next, you're next on my list, but I'm going to introduce you anyway.
Okay.
Who's from Colombia, is the Chief Sustainability Officer for FEM, which is an organization that supports rural ethnic communities secure land ownership, self-governance, and resources guaranteed by part of Colombia's National Development Plan. Ana Maria's work has impacted more than 8,000 people. Again, just get that in your heads. I have to get it in my head. That's a lot of people. 8,000 people who are now collective title holders, and an additional 7,000 that she has worked with who are waiting for the state's response. And next, now back to you, we have Hoang, who is from Vietnam, and she is the founder and executive director of Change, a non-governmental organization that uses new media and creative communications to mobilize, organize, and build the capacity of local youth groups to act to solve the country's most urgent environmental issues. And there are many in Vietnam, as there are around the world. Hoang was inspired to take on environmental work after she joined a UNESCO team of 35 youth from 25 countries to travel to Antarctica in 1997. And next, at the end, we have Tricia Shetty, who's from India, and is the founder and CEO of SheSays, a nonprofit organization and online platform that aims to end gender-based discrimination and advance women's rights in India by engaging youth as agents of social change. SheSays delivers gender sensitivity programs in schools, colleges, and workplaces, and provides free legal, medical, and psychological health care information for survivors of sexual abuse and their families. So I'm going to now move over here as your moderator and jump on in. Great, so let's start. Again, maybe I'll stand up so I can see you. Let's start in this way. We're going to be fairly conversational, but maybe we'll just go down the road and start with you, Elise, which is to talk a little bit about your work, right? What motivated you to do the work you're doing? Tell us a little bit more. I've just given a quick description, so introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. It's really cool to be there, and very strange to hear myself with this very high roof. But and well, the work I'm doing, and thank you for highlighting it, is to connect people. So what does it mean to connect people? It means to kind of match people who are not supposed to meet. So immigrants, refugees, newcomers, asylum seekers. There's many ways to describe the other, especially in politics, with local people. And maybe some of you are familiar with Tinder. Yeah, at least one or two. Okay, so the idea behind it is almost the same. We realized at one point in 2012 when we started SINGA that there was a huge lack of connection and friendship and love among people, especially when it comes to immigration. That's something that has been confirmed in the past year, especially given the fact that migration has become a very polarizing topic. A lot of people talk about building walls, and not only physically, but among citizens. So we wanted to put a little bit of love and friendship and social interaction in this. So we started it as a citizen movement. What does it mean, started as a citizen movement? It looks very, very fancy, but we just went to speak to all our friends in our former universities. We started to ask people, what do you want? And we realized that nonetheless, refugees, asylum seekers, or so-called migrants, I usually say newcomer to avoid labeling. We realized that they were saying, I don't want to be considered as a victim anymore. I want to create new friends. I want to do something here. I want to contribute. I'm fed up of being treated like a beneficiary by all the nonprofit, or like a thief by a lot of people. Or when I look at the TV and they talk about refugee, I'm going to be either a victim or a thief. So it's like, I want to be me again, beyond that. And on the other side, we were talking to the local. We started in Paris, as I said, and we were 25 years old, so we were very naive. And we started to talk to people who were also 25, and all of them were saying, everything that I do is meaningless. I'm looking for sense. I don't want to work in a big company, make tons of money, and have nothing as a purpose in my life. I actually want to go beyond that, and I'm not that interested in the so-called humanitarian ecosystem. So we thought, wow, this is something. On one side, you have people that are often labeled, and this label would prevent them from unlocking their potential in the whole society. And on the other hand, you have a whole generation of people who want to commit, to want their engagement to make sense. I mean, we have to do something out of it. And so we started the network, 300 people at first, then 3,000, today 30,000. And at one point, I mean, today this is my life. All my friends are part of the SINGA communities. I would say I have 150 nationalities in my close ecosystem. And at one point, you also realize that all these people that were meeting each other, they had a lot of ideas of innovative businesses, non-profit. They all had ideas like, I'm going to make a revolution in the recycling industry. I'm going to create a media. I'm going to cook a lot of food. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Eat of Beat. That is from Colombia. It's a catering service of chefs who have a migrant background, refugee background. So these kind of ideas emerge very rapidly, and a lot of people started to talk on the media about crisis, the migrant crisis. It's not really a crisis to me and to us within the community. It became an opportunity.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Hoang, and I'm from Vietnam. I'm from Ho Chi Minh City. Some people know it as Saigon, basically. But I was born in Hanoi, in the north. So I founded an environmental NGO back in 2013. Our organization is called Change. I love that name, and I really fought for it because it took me almost 2 years to register that name in my country because of the political context. So why I founded that organization? Actually, originally I was working for the corporate and making money and being the proud youngster back in 1996, being absolutely confident about oh, I'm such a successful youngster. And then by a very odd chance that I was selected for that expedition to Antarctica. And it's where I just realized how the humans have created horrible negative impacts on the planet. And I came back and I started to quit my job, and it took me years to find my own self. I was lost for so long. I didn't know who I was, what I was looking for. And people was questioning me, why you want to protect the environment. So fast forward, in 2009, I came back to Antarctica again to find myself again there. And there I really, really saw climate change for real. When I saw icebergs, when I saw so much ice melting, and I thought of my country, Vietnam, the lowland coastal a country with like a lot of coastal areas, who would get affected first. So I came back to Vietnam, and from Hanoi, I moved out to Ho Chi Minh City, and I just realized that that 10 million people city didn't have any environmental NGO in the whole city at that time. So I thought to myself, okay, it's time to do something. And with all my experience of working with the WWF for years and being in Antarctica twice and being with all these climate activists, and realize that all change could come only when the community and the people speak up and start to do something rather than politicians or Ministry of Environment or anything like that. So I was like the only one in Ho Chi Minh City at that time believing that we can do something with young people. So I started to mobilize like hundreds and then thousands of people. And then we started to form this organization and start to do everything. And we focus on the most critical issues for Vietnam right now. Climate change, of course, the most critical one, but also wildlife trade. Vietnam I'm sorry, but we are the biggest consumer of illegal wildlife in the world. We are also the huge plastic polluter in the world. We are also the ones that kills the most forests, primitive forests. So I was absolutely lonely, but then when I started to engage communities and young and went to the village and mobilized the grassroots, and they came to me, and I started to have like, I have strength now. So until now, we are 6 years old, and we are having like 150 or so campaigns and projects in the last 6 years. And we have mobilized 20,000 volunteers. And not only that, we mobilize moms, especially, a lot of medical doctors, scientists, even celebrities, lots of celebrities who want to join us because they have the power and we have the causes they want to serve. And believe me, they have their own power. I will tell you more about that later. And one more thing that we had to use a lot, which is new media. So social media, Facebook, where all our media is controlled, absolutely is controlled. All the articles published there are censored. You go to social media, and we have a lot of our contents getting out to the public and revealing the truth to the public, and it's how we create change.
Fantastic. Anna Maria?
Thank you very much. Well, to help you understand a little bit better what I do, I'll tell you that I come from a background of policymaking and academia. And so you know how this is a very technical space, right? So I'll tell you also that the law in Colombia is very favorable for Afro and indigenous communities. Like the Constitution has articles, there's wonderful stuff there for technical people like me. Yet, if you're illiterate and you're disconnected and you live far off any capital city in a deep rural area with no access to water, sanitation, anything, you don't even know you have those rights. So you, much less, like you're not going to be able to demand them, organize. What is it? See what I mean? It's a total disconnect between what I thought was the way to go and what the real way to go was. So I created my organization. It has a weird name. It's called Multidimensional Education Foundation. And it is because we believe multidimensionality to be a truth. Like there is no problem that can be explained only in one way. You have to explain it in multiple dimensions, and you really have to intervene communities in a multiple set of ways. So we encourage communities to do participatory planning for their land management, which requires organization, and then to file for their rights. So when Suzanne said that we have protected the rights of 7,000 people and have filed in for the rights of 8,000 more, it means that these communities are ready to manage themselves, which I think makes all the sense in the world. And that's why that's the type of work we do. And we amplify it through the work of volunteers that come from all parts of the world, that come and share their technical capacity with the community in a very horizontal way. And what I mean by horizontal is not by saying that you know more because you come from academia, but we can build a shared mindset. Some technical, some spiritual, some community-based, and from there you can create new types of development that makes much more sense.
Fantastic.
Thank you. It's always great to go last and listen to all of your stories again. Obviously, I'm from India. And the second you hear that, you may go, oh, obviously you work in the gender abuse, gender-based violence and abuse space. And if you are inclined to think about that, I'm just going to throw open a question to all of you here, to the women in the room, all of you included. Do you change your clothes based on where you go? Say you're taking public transport, do you tend to want to, I hate saying this, like wear jeans, or if you're going in a specific place, do you wear a scarf? Just show of hands. If you change your clothes based on where you go. To the men in this room, do you change your clothes based on where you're going? Not in terms of I want to be professional, not in terms of where the professional setting is. Like, do you account for, today I have to take public transport, I cannot wear the shorts I want to wear lest someone come and pinch my ass or grab my legs. So I can tell you it's because I'm from India and gender-based violence is a huge problem there, but the truth is, the more and more you talk to people and have honest conversations about what their day-to-day life looks like, you'll realize each and every person women, gender non-identifying individuals, are constantly changing their behaviors to account for who's going to touch them, who's going to molest them, who's going to stare at them. And this is not an India-specific or Global South-specific problem. This is a global problem. So when you're dealing with a scale of problem of this magnitude, from my personal perspective, I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse. But having had intimate conversations with people around me, men, women, people who do not conform to genders, I realized that unfortunately I'm but one in a statistic of millions and millions and millions. And what you hear often is, this is just the way it is. Well, how much am I supposed to react to? Am I supposed to react every time someone touches me? This is just the way it is. Parents pass that on to you. This is just the way of life. Adjust, adjust. And if you're Indian, the word adjust will really irk you on an intrinsic level. So this is why I do the work that I do. The fact that regardless of what gender, what demographic you belong to, you know someone or you yourself have faced violence, oppression purely on the basis of your gender, and that is a normalcy and reality we have passed on, is just unacceptable. And for the longest time, we wanted to make sure we were, and we still are, we want to make sure we are need-driven and not cause-driven. And by that, what I mean is there's a lot of work going on within our space, especially in India after the horrific gang rape incident that happened on the bus. A lot of organizations propped up. We wanted to figure out what is already being done, and that's why I said need-driven more than cause-driven, and what can we do? How can we fill in the blanks per se? And we are an unapologetic, youth-led, feminist platform. And the reason why I say that is because the issues are not apologetic and kind, the issues that we're fighting. So we have a young team and we fight tough issues, everything from making sure that we led the largest campaign globally to get the tax removed on menstrual hygiene products, and we did get it removed, to directly engaging with over 160,000 people on ground interventions and programs that we do. And it is an ongoing process. I don't specifically work in the gender space. I take any and all issue, sanitation, healthcare, hygiene, education, public safety, security, laws, advocacy, and I put a gender-sensitive lens on it through a youth-centric perspective. Because that is how I believe, just as Anna reinforced, issues are multidimensional, and that is how we believe as an organization we will have any sort of progress. And even when I say progress, I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but for us, we look at it as 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. Because if you work in this space long enough, you realize previous generations have still been fighting for the same issues. So, but still those 3 steps make every difference for communities on ground. And for that we fight, and that's why I do the work that I do.
Wow. We really could stay here for hours, and I will try to. I could do that, but let me just offer an observation about what the 4 of you have said, and then ask you another question. Each of you came to an issue in a different way, right? But something grabbed you about it, something motivated you about it so deeply. And and even though you're all working on quite different issues, one of the themes, the through lines of what each of you said is the need to connect with others some of whom are doing similar work and some of whom bring different expertise. with the idea being that to active citizenship and social change requires connection, right? It requires that we bring other people, or we meet other people where they are, or we bring other people in connection with us, and each of you has fostered communities, right? You've offered skills, you've offered a platform, you've offered, some of my colleagues in the law school might say a marketplace, right? For people to connect, to change the world for the good. So let me ask you this, right? This work isn't easy, and I can imagine that some who are sitting and listening to you think, wow, I could never be sitting there because they just have done it like this, and I think you spoke to this, Hoang. There's a lot of struggle. Can you talk about something that's been hard or a challenge that you have faced, and couple that with a lesson that you have learned as a leader in doing active citizenship social change work? Who wants to start? You shouldn't go back and forth up and down the line. That's a little boring. So who would, did you want to jump in, Trisha?
So everything is hard. I started with extreme naivete. Had I known how tough the job is, I do not think I would have perhaps stepped into it. So let me prefix by saying everything is hard. Your gender will offend people, your looks will offend people, your age will offend people, your lack of experience will offend people. The fact that you have the temerity to speak the truth will offend people. I remember I was speaking in Qatar for a gender-based conference, and the day before I land, I get a call saying, we know you speak a lot about rape, but can you not mention sexual abuse? Do not mention rape, because it may offend some people. What I've come to realize is listening to the truth, listening to violence makes people very uncomfortable. Right now, if I start telling you about the truth that goes on ground, regardless of which country, the faces will be like, because we are not used to listening to it. Having that initial conversation, forcing people to listen, and this is why I always say, if listening to the stories of violence makes you uncomfortable, imagine what the person's body is going through. You sit down and listen. So if you speak up, it's hard. If you opine over social media, you'll get pushback. If you try to mobilize, then you'll get pushback. The thing to remember is there's money. Oppression just doesn't happen by chance, right? There's financial institutions, there's money behind oppression. So when you're going after people's money, no one is particularly happy about it. And the more you climb up the ladder, the more and more they're pissed off. And the other side strategizes and mobilizes. We think of them as crazy people who don't know better. They don't. They take you seriously and they strategize and mobilize. They'll mobilize on their WhatsApp groups, they'll strategize behind the scenes. And when you get the attacks, you know it's coordinated, you know it's not happenstance. So everything is hard. But the issues are hard, and do you know the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals? The tagline is leave no one behind, right? All our leaders will get up. All our countries have ratified the SDGs. Leave no one behind. They don't want to talk about every life that is being left behind due to lack of the accountability. And when we work in the space of accountability, people get offended. All this to say, it is tough, but silence is not an option. I remember asking, do you know of the Nirbhaya case that happened, the December 2012 gang rape case that happened within our country? I asked a mother, she's someone I really look up to, and I asked her, how do you carry on? Because before I came, I had the audacity to condemn a gang rape of a Muslim girl. And we're living in climates today where if you speak against atrocities that minority communities are facing, you get called a jihadi, you get called a terrorist. Not that jihad means terrorism, I know it doesn't, but the way they've branded jihad. And I asked the mother, how do you carry on? And she said, I paid the price. I paid the price for the community not speaking up. I will be damned if another woman pays the price for me not speaking up. And that is what it means to be an active citizen. You know at this stage, I mean, this is a highly sanitized space. But outside this, and maybe even within this, there is a lot of abuse that all of us are intimately aware of. And to not speak up, if food, clothing, shelters, and a surety, is just a disservice. And even people who don't have food, clothing, shelters, and a surety are still speaking up. So my point is, it is tough, but there is a cost to pay for our silence. And what I can only say is, how do I carry on? Through resilience. And what does resilience mean? Asking my peers, when you fall, how do you get up? What does that get up process look like? strategizing, forming alliances, reaching out to people within the Colombia family and saying we share the same values. Sharing the same values means I show up for you, you show up for me, and I demand that. Because my issue demands that, because it goes beyond me, it goes for my community. So that sense of values, that sense of resilience, and also a sense of self-care. Like, I have a therapist on call. Everyone on my team has a therapist on call. That sense of self-care is why we struggle, and also why we keep showing up, because till the time we have proximity to our community, we know that being here and being an Obama Foundation scholar is amazing, but what got us here? Our work on ground. And what are we fighting for? That community and those people. And who are we going to go back to serve? Those people. So till the time we have that perspective, and till the time you find what your community is, what is the issue you care about, and who are your allies, and who are the people you're fighting against, and that you need to know it's not easy, and what can you do to fight back, that's the journey.
I hope some people are taking notes. There are incredible lessons in all of this. Okay.
I have, my experience has, like, I want to share with you a personal difficulty, like a personal challenge, and also an institutional challenge. In the personal note, I don't have enough melanin to speak for Afro and Indigenous people. I'm not brown enough. I'm not black enough, it seems. That's what I get told all the time. No? Why is it your problem? And so I love that. I love that challenge, because it is my problem. Because I strongly believe that if I have any kind of privilege, I am here to share with those who don't have privilege. I think that privilege comes with the responsibility to see how you redistribute it by definition. So I do not understand the mindset of the people that think that they are entitled to their privileges. I simply cannot relate to that. So that's on the personal level and the lesson. And I just simply keep on working and ignore, and the authority has come from the fact that communities look for us and work with us because they know that it doesn't matter about the melanin, it's about the rights. So, and on the institutional level, I live in a very interesting context where private companies believe that Afro and Indigenous communities are there to stop them from developing or to stop them from profiting. I strongly believe that Afro and Indigenous communities could go into the development model, that not necessarily it is one versus the other, but that there could be win-win scenarios. So I don't understand why they never fund us. We have never gotten any private funding from a company that works around the area, and I am in one of the areas that is most developed in Colombia. And on the other hand, the public sphere is extremely corrupt in the area where I work. So we've had 11 mayors in the past 8 years. 3 of them have gone to jail. So you don't want to touch public money, because if you touch it, you're part of it. So public money is gone. So how do we fund ourselves? Well, because we are a very resilient organization and we are not going to give up, because we know that our issue has the whole, like, here I have to explain, the constitutional right that is given to the people allows them land forever. The land that they once get, they can never be taken back. So it makes all the sense in the world to make as much effort as you want. So we created a tour operator called Cartagena Insider Tours, a hostel called Volunteer Hostel, and a cafe called Café Stepping Stone. And they all produce revenue to fund our mission. It's not enough, but we're not going to give up. Even if we can produce a little bit, then that'll save the land for many, many people and for the rest of the generations.
Okay, I know you're running out of time, but as I try to be brief. So if you want to know about the challenges of doing environmental protection in Vietnam, maybe you try to go there and do it. It's fun and it's exciting, it's incredible. So imagine that you are in a country of 96 million who just got out of the war. I lived through war, I lived through poverty and hunger. I suffered from hunger and poverty myself. And then I got out and suddenly a lot of money coming in. And everyone wants to change their life. Everyone gets better, have better, bigger house and have food on the table. And no one wants to do anything else. They just want to develop. So when you say, hey, let's protect the forest, or the rhinos are dying, the elephants are dying, or the ocean is polluted, nobody cares. They say, hey, Vietnamese people are still hungry and poor there. Why you care about the rhino? Why you care about the plastic killing the whale in Thailand? So we always get challenged by the society, by the people we want to serve. And that's the biggest challenge, because the question about your own motive. Are you sure you are using US money and EU money to come here and protect the air, and you don't have hidden agenda? So we have a lot of that. And also because with all this climate change, all these macro issues, you cannot like get the money and then the next day you show them the result. When you cannot show them direct results, it's impossible to convince others, like, hey, they are making an impact. And all these environmental things, I'm sorry, it will take decades to create any change. So we have all that kind of huge challenge. We also have this, I'm sorry, but I don't know if you know Vietnam, but we are one communist party ruling country. So if you mobilize more than 5 people, you have to have a permit. And my mission is to mobilize people. I want to have like thousands of people in the street and speak up and everything. So I have so much trouble with that. And my community people who help us, who want to be part of the solution, also get into trouble. So we have to really get through all those metrics and get what we want. And one last big challenge that I have to say is that all the best talent, the best students in the world don't want to work for NGOs in Vietnam, because they want to work for the much higher paid salary, because that's how they define success. So no one wants to work for us, like all this harassment, all these challenges, and look at the salary. The salary is symbolic. So if you think that you have solutions for all these challenges that I have, I would love to have coffee with you. I pay.
Elise?
Girls, I really love you. Not to be the teddy bear here, but to build upon almost everything you said, I'm not sure I have a lot to add, but the challenge was that when I started SINGA at 25, I think I was very, very stupid. And I was the kind of girl that I hate today. Because I wanted to change the world with all my naive dreams, so I would go on a cause like migration. Before that, it was global warming, and before that, it was something else. So, and I started by saying, "Oh, look, I'm doing this NGO, this nonprofit work for refugees." And step by step, I started to meet with the people I was calling refugees, and step by step, I started to stop talking on their behalf. But at the very beginning, I've been challenged by a girl, and I'm sure you guys are fed up of me telling this story all the time, but it's really a deep story, because we were connecting a young student like you from this very prestigious school with Fode, who was from Sierra Leone and had a refugee status. And very shortly, after 2 weeks of having introduced each other, having introduced Fode to Emily, Emily came to me and she said, "My refugee is very stupid." And you can think about the sentence, "My refugee is stupid." It's not even the stupid that bothers me, it's like my refugee. And this is a symptom of a lot of people who have in their mind that they're kind of changing or saving the world. And I thought, my God, this is this that we need to address. Not the helping part, more than the phrasing. And by doing civic mobilization, we started to engage more and more people, mostly millennials, mostly young people, but we launched also a hosting platform. So it's like an Airbnb platform. It's in France, people can apply and they can host someone who has a refugee status up to 1 year. Imagine, it was in September 2015, the moment where everybody was talking about the migrant crisis. So we had, within 2 weeks, 10,000 French people who applied to host. You cannot imagine what I read. Because there was this idea of, I am saving someone. I'm not saying the people were this or that, or narrow-minded or so on. I'm just saying that the emotions that they could see in the media was triggering this idea for them to save. So we had to do a lot of work of deconstruction. Please think about that. Forget about your ideal refugee. He doesn't exist. The Syrian handsome guy that you have in mind may not exist. Yes, refugee can read. Yes, they can have a watch and read what time it is. And we had to go through this whole process. And today, I think that when I hear, oh, let's change the word or save the word, I still have this reaction of telling myself, no, it's not about that. There's a moment where we also, as civic leaders, need to stop, and I think all of us do this job perfectly, need to stop considering ourselves as hero, because that's not the case. We help people to become heroes of their life, maybe, but we're not the heroes here. It's about unlocking people, and I think the students studying in Colombia now is the first generation, I'm not even part of it, who can speak up against discrimination, about global warming, about sexism, without being questioned. There's a kind of rise of credibility, kind of, not everywhere, I agree. But this is the first time I think that a whole generation can stand up as a whole without being questioned. So it's also a power that can be used to build space and tools for other people who don't have the chance to speak out.
So, one of you've offered so many leadership lessons along with the challenges, and I did ask the question that way deliberately, because especially when we're thinking about how do you change really difficult problems in the world, how do you even get your arms around them? It can seem so daunting. I mean, every single project that you're working on and all of the projects that the other scholars here are working on, many people would, just want to put your head down, right? How can I possibly make a dent in the problem? And yet part of what each of you is showing us is it is hard, right? It's relentlessly hard. And yet the only way to make change is to take the steps and is to make the mistakes and is to learn from the mistakes. And that's how you make the dents. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, especially in a school setting, especially in a very traditional classroom, the feel can be, oh, the professor has the answers, right? And I am here to learn, and I'm to learn from somebody who has the answers. And then as you get, or at least I've found as I've gotten a little older, I start to realize, oh, right, the people in charge, we don't have all the answers, right? Or the older generation or whatever, and that the idea is really, life is dynamic, problem solving is dynamic. And so one of the best things we can do to leverage our knowledge and our energy, as each of you is describing, is to learn from other people, right? And you each spoke about resilience, right? There's the personal resilience, there's the organizational resilience. You spoke about having humility, right? We're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna make mistakes. That is the only way you get better, right? Is to recognize not only that you will make mistakes, but to try to see them when they're happening, and then to try to learn from them and to try to connect up with others who can give you support. And I want to underscore also, which I think has come through, I think in everything you said, but we've also talked before this session, is that having a sense of humor, right? Because if you can't find ways to laugh sometimes in the face of such difficulty, it can be very, very hard to go on. So let me just ask you a very brief question for a 1-minute answer each. And then I just want to let everybody know I'm going to turn to you, and we'll take a handful of questions, brief questions or comments, and then turn back to our panel and then ask the other scholars to introduce themselves. So you've been at Columbia almost a year now, and the lightning round question here is, what's something you've learned in this past? I know there's a lot you've learned and a lot that you've seen that you think probably could be improved on, and that may be just a discussion for another day. But what's something you've learned that you're going to take back with you when you go back and continue the work you've been doing? And I know many of you are all continuing the work even while you're here, but what's something what's a gem that you can share with folks here?
Anybody?
Anybody.
Okay, there's a broad way to see it, and then a very specific example. The broad way to see it is I understood myself still as a researcher. And I understood that I could have a conversation with academia from the perspective of the work I do to build new knowledge. That for me was really, really encouraging. And specifically, I have worked very well with the Data Science Institute. We are developing a project together, analyzing my data sets, the information that we produce in the field, with technologies that Columbia University hadn't started using yet. And they're helping me analyze. So it's a perfect exchange of knowledge, because now we are building new knowledge about land issues in Colombia, and we're producing information that has never been said before. It's going to be a breakthrough in Colombian land issues related research.
For me, it's a little reverse because normally people would just go to university and then go out and do your job. For me, it's totally the other way around. I started to just start working like hell and make 3 million mistakes. And then now I come to this Columbia University and started to, oh, this is the theory that I've been missing for so long. And I have learned so much of the missing pieces in all my 20 years of just doing it and making mistakes. And now I have academic knowledge to my job. And I think this is super valuable. I'm telling you, if you are here in Colombia, you have to understand how lucky you are to be in this environment. And on the other hand, also one more point is because we could attend different classes in different colleges, and I have a much bigger picture of my work. So normally I would just looking environmental, oh, we have to protect the forest and the rhino and everything. Now I look at that as like a huge development picture, where gender is also calculated, injustice, inequality, a lot of other factors should be combined in with this. So when we work with the community, the environmental protection will be a lot more convincing because it's a lot more related to them.
I think I've learned what sleep means.
Help me out, I'm not sure I know.
For the first time in the past 7 years, we had the chance to sleep, to do what we wanted with our times. And there was, and when we met Barack Obama at the very beginning of the year, he said something that really resonated with me. Self-care is very important. You need discipline on the way you eat, the way you practice sport, meditation maybe, the way you work. And I think that, I say that half joke, half not, because I've learned through the scholarship and through Columbia University, of course, we have so many resources, we have so many opportunities, and of course you arrive, you send an email and you say, hi, Obama Scholars, everybody opens their doors. So it's kind of, wow, it's the first time that I'm not struggling to get things I want, to get things for my community, for my organization. So that was huge, actually. So it also helps creating, self-care helps creating discipline in the work that we do. I'm sure I'm speaking on everybody's behalf when I say that we need to push our own limits in the way we work, and we need to we have very high self-expectation. I don't know one social entrepreneur who has not put the bar so high that no one can reach it. So I think we've learned also how to be measured in the way we work, but still very good also.
Just to give quick context, by the time I came to Columbia University and left India, the baggage I came with is, all of us, specifically me, and I speak on Hoang's behalf as well, we have received validation and accolades in international spaces. Our own governments have want nothing to do with us. I have received immense love from my people, and I've also received immense hate and vitriol and death threats and rape threats and called every name in the book. So by the time I left, when you're in this space, you're leaning in so much and you're running because you're constantly running, it gets hard to get a different perspective. So when I first came, my focus was on unlearning. So I started unlearning. I started unlearning that I don't need to take myself this seriously. I started unlearning my deeply held perspectives by listening to others' perspectives, by listening to these women challenge me head on. And Anna is very famous for, Anna and Elise were raising their hands in between people speaking and saying, actually, let me give you a differing position. So I learned unlearning. Second thing I learned was that fear is a distraction. The people threatening you, and of course you have to be strategic about it, assessing what you have to worry about in terms of personal safety and security, because unlike we are called the Obama scholars, but unlike the Obamas, I don't have a battalion of team accounting for my security and safety. The team starts and stops with Tricia Shetty. So fear is a distraction, and how you navigate through that was the second learning. And strategizing, and what does that mean? And the third learning is recognizing and understanding how much power and my power capital. Because I'm not mistaken about what I'm fighting against. When I'm going back to India again, like I said, this is very sanitized. I know what I'm going to go back to, and I know what I left, and I know what I'm struggling even right now with. But the one thing I realized is, what am I going to do worrying about fear? Like, it's not easy for them to take me down. I have incredible credibility, I have incredible power, I have incredible social capital, and the relationships I have built here, the people that I've connected with the same values, will show up for me tomorrow if something happens. So with that confidence and with those learnings, I feel a lot more equipped to go back. And if nothing else, let me just say, the family that Lisa has facilitated, the family that the Colombia faculty, Avril, and all of them have facilitated for us, and the kind of, I wouldn't even say hospitality as much as solidarity. That has been so incredibly special, and that you all get to live within these walls and celebrate that and lean on that. Tap into it. I still hesitate a lot to tap into it. Now my thing is tap into it as much as you can. So those are the learnings.
Fantastic. So I think we have really just a couple of minutes for a couple of questions or comments, and then one of my colleagues will let me know if we actually have time for the scholars to respond to the questions and comments. So somebody will. So we have colleagues from University Life who are walking around with mics, and what we're going to do, just to alert you, is take a few. So try to remember, and then if we have time, we'll respond. So go ahead. And if you could just say your name, what school you're from, or if you're not from one of the schools here at Columbia, which part of Columbia you're connected to.
Yes, my name is Ben Chu, and I'm with the School of GS here, first semester at Columbia, and thank you for sharing your powerful experience. I have a question for Ms. Hoang, is that right? So I understand that in Vietnam you talk about the challenge of dealing with the government trying to get more than 5 people to go out. And so, I understand it's enormous challenge in terms of getting permission from the government to do any kind of promotional. And your organization is about change. So it's raising a big red flag to them. So where do you draw the inspiration from, and what caused you to move, to create, and to do what you are doing right now?
Great, thanks very much. I know a few others I've seen.
Good afternoon. My name is Khadija. I'm a student at GS. My question, I think I have 2 questions, but the first one goes to you. You, with the work you're doing with women, and I love the fact that you said that this is not just India, it's violence towards women happen worldwide. And it's funny that you said that, because I was saying the same thing. Recently, like a month ago, I was at the UN and they were talking about FGM, something that I personally went through. And I was telling them, like, I started sharing my story because I think it's important that I share this story, and I'm trying to find healing because it's still a taboo to talk about. And my question is, what advice do you have for someone who's trying to talk about issues that are like taboos in most societies? Yeah.
Thanks very much.
And the other question is for her, the lady from Vietnam. I know you face challenges, because if you are fighting for like global warming in a society where still people don't believe that global warming exists, what are some of the challenges.
Great, thank you. One more?
Hi, my name is Tranquilly. I'm not from Colombia, I'm from CUNY. I'm working on my dissertation on relationship between government and nonprofits in Vietnam. So I heard what Hoang said a little bit. My question for Anna is about who make the agenda for multiple education. It's really a great idea, but who decide for the agenda? And how you can use the local resources, because when you go to different community, they have different. If you have set curriculum, then how you can identify results? Second related question about multi-education is, if you have that great idea, why don't you embed multi-sector? Because I heard you say challenge to deal with private sector, with government, but how, because education comes from multiple areas. So that why you include them.
Okay. Great. Thank you for all of the questions. And I can just see, maybe it's a lot of years of being a professor, I can see that even those of you who didn't raise your hand have thought bubbles above your heads about the questions you would like to ask the scholars. So what I'm actually going to do is, given the time, ask you not to respond right now. And with recognition that we are going to have time for much more conversation in a couple of minutes, and ask that the other scholars in the room take a moment to introduce themselves briefly. If you could just say, again, your name and where you're from and the 1-minute version of your organization. And just please, for everybody in the room to know that everybody here who's sitting in the room could also equally have, be speaking for half hour or many hours about their work. So why don't you get us started?
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Paranjoti, and I'm from Singapore. And I run an organization called Freedom Cups, and what we do is that we deal with periods. So we get reusable menstrual products to women in both, developed communities as well as developing ones, and we try to negate the effects of having a period. And what we're finding is that in communities that we work in, we're keeping girls in school and women are earning more money, and we're reducing soil and water pollution levels, infection rates, and increasing the overall standard of life. So that's, in a nutshell, what I do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rumbi Zai SINGA. I am Zimbabwean and live in South Africa. Africa has the fastest growing youth population, as you might know, which has been branded either the youth crisis or the youth bulge. And our work centers around empowering young people so that they can meaningfully and strategically participate in elections and governance.
Hello, everyone. Oh, geez. Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Olusegun Onigbinde. I'm from Nigeria. I run an organization called Budget. The work we do is to take public data, especially budget and public finance documents, to a very simple state that everybody within the society and the community, irrespective of literacy span or level of interest in governance, can understand how public funds are spent. So it's a mix of citizen participation, fiscal transparency, accountability, and also empowering local actors to hold government to account. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Omezine Khalifa. I come from Tunisia. I'm the founder of an organization that is called Moderator, meaning creatives in Arabic, and we work in marginalized areas with teenagers to prevent them to be recruited by violent extremist groups. Actually, we try to inspire them to become the peaceful and creative change leaders of their community. So our work is basically between violent extremism prevention, youth leadership, and youth education. Thank you.
Hi everyone, sorry my voice. My name is Peter Daherje. I am from Burundi, and I am with a non-profit organization, and we are based in the rural areas. We are working with communities providing healthcare through a holistic approach, which involves economic development, education, food security and nutrition. And we do that through community engagement that connects community people that we are serving with the organization, just to make sure that every single community people is involved in every single activities that we are implementing in the community. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriela from Paraguay, a small country in Latin America. I'm working in an NGO and a startup at the same time. We are building technology, so machine learning algorithms and software to be able to detect learning and developmental problems in children, especially in developing countries where you don't have educational psychologists or ophthalmologists or specialists to actually pick up these problems. And so we can prevent children from falling behind for preventable reasons. So that's what we do. Thank you.
Is that everybody? Great. I think it's not hard to see why each of the people who is here as an Obama Scholar was selected as an Obama Scholar, the incredible leadership, the incredible vision, and not just vision, but the ability to have the vision and then do the work to make the change. One of the things that is often the hardest is to take that step from having the idea to what we might call operationalizing the idea, actually taking the risk, taking the leap, trying to do things that you don't know how to do, trying and making mistakes and trying again, and it's so exciting and to have all of you here as part of Colombia. So I know people ask very good questions, and I want to encourage you to find the scholars of whom you ask those questions to in a moment when we break. But let me just ask you this, if you could each take a last minute and share one more thought on being an active citizen, on active citizenship, one either lesson learned or insight you want to share with folks here, in any order you wish.
If I could just club her question and answer the question. Thank you, Khadija, and I'm sorry for what you were subject to. That's unacceptable. What it means to be an active citizen. Last year during General Assembly Week, Anga, there was a panel I was on with Melinda Gates, and we were asking about youth mobilization and the power of young people. And a lot of the conversation was the positive rhetoric, right? So I went rogue, and I spoke about how UN Women has covered up accusations of sexual abuse and sexual assault in the highest of offices, and they're still complicit. They fired the person, but they're still complicit. The highest of offices within UN Women are complicit. You can see the faces of the people change, but there were also people clapping. My point is, never let a room or the people, the status or symbols or magnanimous rooms silence you from sharing your truth. Your truth supersedes everything. So any space you are in, demand to be seen and heard, and I can't tell you what to say because you know what your body was subject to. You are your best advocate. I would be so arrogant to come and tell you this is what you should say. So you have the solution, and the only thing I can tell you is find places that will give you a platform to speak. And this is what being an active citizenship and active citizen means, that you force yourself to listen to conversations that make you uncomfortable. You force institutions, you force spaces to hold conversations that make people uncomfortable but voices truth of people, and at the same time you highlight solutions generated by people who are the most disadvantaged, by the people who have suffered. So I am sorry for what you are subject to, and I bow down to you for sharing your truth, and I know that you will lead the FGM revolution and the change, and there are also amazing activists I know in this space I'm happy to connect you to.
And certainly you should feel free to incorporate into your active citizen response whatever you'd like to say in response to the questions.
So we're not talking about the active citizen, right?
Yeah. Active citizens, and if you want to say a quick response to any of the questions raised,
the question as well.
As you like.
All right.
In a minute and a half.
In a minute. Okay, that's tough. That's a challenge. I think active citizen is someone who dares to overcome his own or their own fear and weaknesses and all the biases and prejudices and everything to take an action, like the first ever action towards some change that they believe that needs to be done. And I'm saying that because I want to address your question, and thank you very much. Are you from, where are you from?
Originally from Vietnam.
What? I can't believe it. I want to cry. But anyway, you were right, because all the years that we are doing all this, we had so much of like threats and from both the government and the pro-government kind of, community. And what I have seen is just how the fear that just held us back so much. And we see that, the movement is just like being held back just because of our own fear that we're just having in our own mind. So I think by engaging the community, the young people who I think they are a little bit more risk-taking, usually they are more brave, they are more open to the new, they are the one who give me the strength to say that you can do it, we can protect you, all kind of things. And one more thing that really makes me move forward is just because I see changes. So if we see that, everyone is like, don't want to take action, but if you look back 10 years ago, it's a lot of change. We see change not like from yesterday, we have to see the change compared to 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And it's where you really see that, yes, we are doing something. We have created some impact, and we believe that, so probably we're doing the right thing, and that's where you find the motivation to go ahead. And one more small thing is just where you work, when we work with the community in grassroots, and you see their own misery and pain and something very personal, very emotional to them. When you see a family losing some people because of the floods or anything like that, you really have the guts to do more than what you can do. So a lot of times I did a lot more than what I could do, and I almost like really killed myself. But we got out of it because we got out of the fear. And I think that's how all my volunteers, like thousands of them, as well as 20 young people who are with me at Change, who quit all their jobs to join this movement, they have overcome their fear, and their family is kind of like, where is my money? Or why don't you contribute your salary to me? They overcome all that because they see the 10-year vision from now on.
Building on what Hoang says, and also on something that Alice said before, like, it's really easy for you to see us as heroes. I know, it's really comfortable. It's extremely comfortable to see, they are so cool and they're taking the risk. Wonderful. The one thing that I think strikes us more than anything is the lack of courage of other people. And I've heard students here, I had this conversation in Barnard where I'm taking a class, saying, I'm not prepared for that, I'm not ready for that, I don't know enough. Listen, you guys, we didn't know. I became an entrepreneur, like my MBA was opening the tour operator. I had never opened an Excel to create a financial thing. I just needed to learn, and I learned. And so the fear of not knowing enough, something, it's never going to happen. We don't know enough yet of our issue. We don't know if it's the best. The only difference that we have, I think, yet, and that doesn't mean that we're unique, it's just that we went a little bit before, is that we jumped. And we are a little bit more ready to just improvise as we fall and hit hard and stand up. Because we have, I've broken all my bones by now, on that fall. But then I wait, I get cured, I go on. Because and I think active citizenship is about beating self-doubt. I don't even think it's about fear. Like Colombia now, I could tell you, no, I have fear of being killed. Yeah, but it's way before that. Way before you're under threat. You just have to take the risk and take the chance to try something out, even if it's a mistake. Just do it. Instead of speaking out only, speaking out is not enough. Do stuff for other people. Put yourself in an uncomfortable position.
This is a hard position to say after that. Who here is very optimistic about the word? Yes. Cool. That's a big minority. If there's an advice, I think it's, I'm a very angry person. I'm not, I'm not very pessimistic, but I'm very angry. I mean, I just go on Twitter and then I'm really angry. And of course, when we do the work that we are doing, we are listening to a lot of stories that make you really, really angry. Not scared or sad, but angry. And I think, I don't know, I don't really believe in activism by anger, by speaking out and say, you bastards, all the time. And this is not really my way of working, but depends on the topic, I guess. But I would say that the most useful advice would be to take this anger and turn it into motion, and as Anna just said, do something. Because otherwise, and this is a quote from you, we're all gonna die. So maybe for any topic, there's a very crucial need to take action. And again, it's not going to be the other generation. It's going to be the new generation and the one coming after. And so the emotions, taking into account the emotions is very important. Maybe anger, but also joy. It's a fuel in the work that we are doing. And it's love that is also going to get us out of this shit.
Yes.
Yes.
That's good. So I am, for those of you who know me, this won't surprise you to hear, I'm a glass half full sort of person. So when you said who's optimistic, I said me. It's not that I think the problems all get solved or that we are, in short or medium or long term going to be in the perfect world. And at the same time, I have tremendous faith in humanity and in the capacity of people to see injustice and to take steps toward change. And I would say to all of the students in the room, I have tremendous faith and in each of you. Sometimes I think it can be very hard to know where to start, especially when you haven't yet jumped in. One observation that somebody once shared with me that I think is quite powerful is that if you don't know where to start, a place to start is to bear witness. Just to listen, to learn, to be open, to learn, to listen. And as you start to do that, then the steps to take start to emerge. And you may, after you take one step, decide, oh, now let me step in a different direction and learn from what I did and go from there. But you can't move unless you start. And even to start from where you sit and do the bearing of witness and start the learning process, you will find yourselves, each of you and all of us, really taking inspiration from the others around us, taking inspiration from the people who have come before us, learning those lessons and expanding toward change. So really, I want to, if the other Obama scholars in the room can also stand up while I say these closing remarks, I want to really invite everybody in the room to find the scholars here and at the tables to talk with folks about what they're doing and what you're doing and what you might learn. I want to thank all of you so much for coming, and if you could please join me in thanking and recognizing our tremendous Obama Foundation scholars.